Hello and welcome to the first session of Techne Beyond Monoculture, Part 3 by Cécile Malaspina. The seminar consists of a series of discussions with guests from the fields of philosophy, art, media theory, and digital humanities, taking aim at the idea that capitalist techno-rationality is the only available paradigm for technology. The use of the ancient Greek term techne in the title of the seminar signals a broader perspective on technology, situating today's concerns notably about the simulation of intelligence and the challenge of deepfakes in the context of the ancient distrust of techne as a form of trickery or mere mimesis. This ambivalence toward technology as something that is historically revered and feared as both remedy and poison in the sense of the pharmakon is in fact indissociable from the technical mediation of culture. This calls for a broader understanding of technology, encompassing the artful and skillful mediation of nature, as well as the invention of objects unknown in nature. While our understanding of nature has changed beyond recognition from the ancient Greek, it is now more urgent than ever to discern the critical role that our attitude to technology plays, both as a catalyst of the climate crisis and as a key factor of its still possible mitigation. This seminar will engage with the critical contemporary relevance of issues such as the relation between knowing and doing as episteme and techne, the relation between intelligence, wisdom, and practical wisdom as nous, Sophia, and phronesis or prudence, the challenge of epistemological noise in the relation between the human sciences and STEM subjects, the formulation of transdisciplinary problems, the criteria and virtues for a synergy of cultural, ecosystemic, and biodiversity, the role of technodiversity in addressing climate change, and the emancipation of technology from capitalist monoculture. Cécile Malaspina is the author of an epistemology of noise and principal translator of Gilbert Simondon's On the Mode of Existence of Technical Objects, with the collaboration of John Rogoff. She is directeur de programme at the Collège International de Philosophie in Paris, short CIPH, where she is also a member of the executive board. She is visiting fellow at the King's College London, where her program for the CIPH is hosted by the Department of Digital Humanities and the Department of French in association with the Center for Art and Philosophy. Department of French, she is a member of the editorial boards of the CIPH book series at the Presse de Paris Nanterre and of its Journal of Philosophy, Rue Descartes, where she's recently become co-responsible for the epistemology section, as well as being contributing editor to Angelaki, Journal of the Theoretical Humanities, commissioning editor for the independent publisher Copy Press, and guest editor at Nature, Humanities and Social Sciences Communications. Cécile Malaspina obtained a doctorate in epistemology, philosophy, and history of the sciences and technology from Paris 7 Denis Diderot, and a master's in contemporary French philosophy and critical theory from the Center for Research in Modern European Philosophy in the UK. Before turning to philosophy, she trained as an art historian, goldsmith, and curator at RCA. Her main interest lies in the normativity of concepts, especially with regard to the aesthetic and ethical implications of conceptualizing contingency and uncertainty. And also, today as a guest we have Gert Lovink, who's a Dutch media theorist and internet critic and author of Uncanny Networks, Dark Fiber, My First Recession, Zero Commons, Networks Without a Cause, Social Media Abyss, Organization After Social Media with Ned Rossiter, Sad by Design and Stuck on the Platform. He studied political science at the University of Amsterdam and received his PhD from the University of Melbourne. In 2004, he founded the Institute of Network Cultures at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. His center organizes conferences, publications, and research networks such as Video Vortex, The Future of Art Criticism, and Money Lab. Recent projects deal with the digital publishing experiments, critical meme research, participatory hybrid events, and the precarity in the arts. From 2007 to 2018, he was media theory professor at the European Graduate School. In December 2021, he was appointed professor of art and network cultures at the University of Amsterdam's Art History Department. The chair is supported by the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. Since 2022, he is involved in support campaigns for Ukrainian artists, in particular Ukraina TV, a streaming art studio operating out of Krakow. Gert, please take it away.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction and for having me here. I'm very excited, and I've known the new center since quite a while. I've known some teachers and some students, and so yeah, it's really, really exciting that I can now contribute to this most amazing project. Today, I want to present you a new essay. So it's not yet published. Maybe it will be in the next couple of weeks or months. I don't know exactly. I want to say something about maybe the prehistory or the context of it. The title is Copium Compendium. How do you cope in this digital age of disaster? This essay is maybe a follow-up, or it's something that in my work is maybe a little bit of a new development that I've been writing about these advanced forms of stagnation, recession, crises, maybe after a period of extreme growth, hope, change, involvement, activism, you name it. I've been a media activist since the early 80s, a media theorist, then a little later on, and since the mid-90s. Also, I call myself an internet critic. I've been involved in internet activism since the early 90s. So that's a good 30 years. And yeah, these last 5 years really have been very different. Let's say from maybe roughly speaking, 2015, 16, right? With the rise of Trump, Brexit, the rise of right-wing populism in Europe, but also elsewhere. Think of Modi or Bolsonaro. We're talking here about really changes that are happening in a variety of cultures and geopolitical settings. So I have been kind of changing my perspective of my own work, my own writings. This is not to say that my institute itself, which, you know, it's small. Okay, we have 3 or 4 people. We have interns. It's not a big thing, but yeah. Nonetheless, yeah, it already exists for a good almost 20 years. So yeah, it has some history. And in 2020, I started with the 3rd generation of staff. So all the other ones before got better jobs. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of that. But yeah, so maybe the scope of the research networks that we're working on hasn't really changed so much. Our emphasis, as was mentioned in the intro, is very much, and maybe that's how you got to know us, is on digital publishing experiments. So we publish a lot of things, maybe in non-traditional ways, so not in the normal academic fashion, but still with a big emphasis on theory, on speculative theory, and on let's say critical involvements in these technologies, if you can call internet like that. Is it a technology? Yes, but it's not one thing. It's nowadays, it's such a beast. It's such an ecology. It's a sphere. It's I don't know. It has grown and grown, right? When I started, we were with maybe 10 million users. Now we are with 5 billion plus and counting, right? So this expansion has really dominated the whole field. However, that's no longer the case. My focus changed on the impact these new forms of confinement, of platforms, of new enclosures, if you like. We in the past never associated the internet with extraction, with enclosures, etc. Right? We talked about networks. We talked about maybe decentralized communication and so on, right? And that has all been kind of incorporated, neutralized. It's not always the case that it has completely vanished, right? In my work, I still deal with this current tension between networks that somehow still exist, and maybe the news center one could call a network. Of course, it's also a school. I don't know if you use the word platform. I would advise you not to do that, but okay. The new center can also be a platform, if you like, probably a small one. And then there's, of course, Benjamin Bratton's notion of the stack, which is kind of more like a metaphysical Uber category on top of all that. My work is not characterized by metaphysics. For me, there's always a lot of applied or technological, like code. Very, my emphasis is not so much on metaphysics, but on materialist culture. So the internet is an assembly of data centers, in particular. In the past, we would have talked about nodes and modems and these kinds of things. But yeah, these days it's incredibly centralized. So in the last 5 years, I have focused, as I said, on the mental impact of this turn, which you could call an infrastructural turn on individual users that are no longer just networking, peer-to-peer, enjoying connectivity, browsing, surfing, etc., but are really locked into very specifically modified and monitored social media platforms and platforms in general. It doesn't always have to be social media, but yeah, it is now a general condition. My essay maybe is worth mentioning here, that I published in 2019. It's called Sad by Design, and there I picked one very specific, let's say, mental condition. I say mental, or it has got something to do with mood, and these moods, as we know, are technologically produced. They don't fall out of the sky. Of course, you can have a chicken and egg discussion, what came first, the real existing depression and the fact that people feel bad, that they can't really liberate themselves anymore, that they are confined in very boxed in identities and situations. And then on top of that are these platforms coming in, right? So I'm not really distant enough yet to see, and the discussion hasn't really involved too much, so that we can say, what came first. But maybe it doesn't really matter what came first. The fact is, and this is what we're studying, and many of you, I suppose, is the interplay, right? And that's important. It's no longer important that we kind of create a chronology and see what came first. But these are things that really interact at each other. So there's the example of sadness, which in my case I explained it as something that is kind of close to a depression, but it's not medical. It is maybe the successor of the historical manifestation of melancholia, right? Are we still melancholic? Yeah, I don't really know. So it does sadness exist online and in the real world? Yes, and there's so much evidence for that. But there are, I see it more as a kind of not a rainbow, if only it was a rainbow, as a specter of mental situations, right? Lately, I'm also reading up a lot on, for instance, loneliness, very, very important and interconnected feeling, which social media also, reproduce and enhance. And there's a lot of evidence for that too. Since Trump and the rise of the right-wing populism, of course, there is also something like, the point where anxiety moves to anger, right? And so anger is also a very important emotion. As you may know, I'm not using the word affect. I'm not a Deleuzian, and we're not going to go into that. I am in the Dutch language. Affect is definitely not a word to use, and so I shy away from that, not because I'm against it, but it hasn't really, I think, done much for the more detailed study of the mental states of the online billions in the current environment. So I'll leave it maybe up to you, up to others, to defend the affect theory and to really make a point that this will really, provide us with much deeper insights. But to be honest, I'm not so interested in such academic debates. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and all the issues that I'm addressing here are absolutely urgent. They affect the daily lives of particularly young people, and literally billions of them, right? The numbers are always staggering. And so we're talking here about, emerging techno-mental assemblies that, are really, really urgent to describe and to address. And this is also what we are doing at the Institute of Network Cultures. Okay, let's start. I'm going to read at least parts of the essay, and then we can see. And let me try if the slides are working, so that so they're changing. If it's all gonna work, I don't know, but we'll see. I programmed them to change every 20 seconds, but yeah, let's see. So, Copium Compendium. How do you cope in this age of disaster? There is the never-ending pressure of new requirements. but none are beneficial for you. Desire disappeared long ago, and your soul feels depleted. You need change, but you can't cope with change any longer. What happens when there is no more energy to address the issues head on, and you forget to take care of your body? What if you are bored and feel lonely now that your online friends no longer answer? You get intoxicated, but it's no longer possible to get high. How do digital souls survive when perseverance means nothing anymore? They say opportunity for advancement is gone. Once you're too tired to manage your life and deal with planetary dysmorphia, there's always the fallback option of copium. If the project of maintaining existence in the face of perpetual crisis is about reclaiming the power of definition in the fight against right-wing meme hegemony, here is one. Copium is the digital information intake that makes one temporarily numb, intoxicated, and deprived of sensation when there is literally zero emotion on display. This is the road taken from bittersweet irony down to confronting and overcoming absolute nihilism. What happens when there's no energy left to deal with the world's true nature and you can enter an unnarratable condition? Copium are necessary techniques that help you to keep going beyond the destructive sides of drugs taking and psychedelic ecstasy of colorful alternative realities. Push ahead, say it out loud, stay weird, and be assured there's life again after the event horizon. Enter the tricky pharmakon of painkiller as attitude that opens up to the miracle. What happens when the escalation of shock value tactics no longer works? Once inside the rabbit hole, one forgets euphoria and even the rush. Instead of a theatrical breakdown, the fictional yet all too real copium drug causes a whatever flatlining of involuntary capitalism we're thrown into. Please note that the mechanical robot metaphor is no longer contemporary to express the dead inside of feeling indifference. While you are at once partly alive and partly dead, today's robots jump, they dance, fall down, and stand up again. Even worse, they apologize. The robots apologize and ask how you're doing. Chatbots are trained no longer just to be polite and distant, as in the case of Hall in 2000: A Space Odyssey, but they are programmed to be empathic, provoking violent responses by the frustrated multitudes that rage against the artificial stupidity and unfounded hope. Have a nice day, and please do not forget to rank me, says the robot. Copium is a substance that helps people deal with stress and other negative emotions. According to Know Your Meme, the website, I quote, copium used to describe a fictional drug to help one deal with loss. It is frequently used in a meme featuring Pepe the Frog hooked onto an oxygen tank labeled copium. You saw it, the image. A chemical used to soothe the mind of a person who has just lost a debate. The term goes back to the mid-2003, so that's around for 20 years, and I was a bit surprised, to be honest, that there was no serious theorization of this important, online term as of yet. But again, that's the situation we find ourselves into. There's a very elaborate internet culture of the masses that is out there completely, undescribed. So please pick and choose, take your chances, I would say. So the term goes back to the mid-2003, when rapper Kick That Sneak released the album Copium. There's also a suggestion, according to Wiktionary, that copium gives energy to denial in those that consume it. So there's an active cultivation of denial. The term got popularized in meme space during the 4chan Twitter Trump years, right? Between 16 and 20. It can also be read as a reference to the US opiate crisis of that time. I quote, turns out the real opiate of the masses is opiates. And that's a meme. However, the emphasis here lies on aesthetics and how to grapple with stress, panic, and anger, not on the luring self-destructive ways out. My dear friend Bernard Stiegler describes this period as the collapse of global childishness, as he called it, leaving the white middle classes to sink into misery, alcoholism, drug addiction, and resentment, accelerating the regression of their life expectancy, as well as the collapse of their intelligence quotient. End of quote. And I would like to devote this essay, of course, to him. I have been working. I had the privilege to collaborate with Bernard Stiegler in the last 7 years of his life. And so my own work was very much influenced by him, and also was in direct, and still is, in direct dialogue with him. Okay. While Urban Dictionary defines copium, I quote, as a metaphoric opiate inhaled when faced with loss, failure, or defeat, essentially in sports, politics, and other tribal settings, the emphasis here lies on the structural aspects of a life defined by serial defeats, right? So the element of serial defeat is important here. How do you cope with that? What happens when the loss becomes permanent and gets hardwired into techno-social existence? The shock doctrine, remember Naomi Klein's concept, the shock doctrine that defined the neoliberal age is long gone. Yet change is for the happy few. The shock is now permanent and has become an integral part of 21st century life. What remains is diversity in the form of stagnation, regression, crisis, and decline, and a never-ending sense of disaster. And we just spoke about climate disasters. Well, that's one of them. And this is what Kim Stanley Robinson in the Ministry for the Future called Götterdämmerung capitalism. Nothing will disappear voluntarily out of the blue. Appearances refuse to fade away. With both history and technology further speeding up, the hyper forces become autonomous entities that no longer need the human subject. That's the bleak life after the tipping point. In 1843, Karl Marx wrote, "Religion is the scythe of the oppressed creature, the heart of a soul heartless world, and the soul of a soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people," right? This is the famous quote. The aim of religion was to calm down uncertainty in life. Around the same time, the God is dead phrase started to circulate. Blame Spinoza, Kierkegaard, Stirner, and Nietzsche. But once the secular genius was out of the bottle, no spiritual renaissance could reinstate the violent authority of religion, with fundamentalist religion regimes in, for instance, Iran or Afghanistan serving as a cruel reminder, right? So they are reminding us of the violence of religion in the past. Fast forward from the 19th century, and the question is, what is copium of the people today? What calms you down? How do you cope? What are ways to incorporate insecurities in the light of the inevitable? The raw objectivity of the collapse alone will not lead to political action unless we take vulnerability into account. This is the lesson for the 2020s. We're supposed to be actors, but behave like 20th century spectators. This is our melancholy. Just that something so good, you just can't function no more. Yeah, that's the Joy Division quote, of course. Just that something so good just can't function anymore. Instead of defining coping as a psychological strategy whereby the mostly male subject rejects the harsh truth and adopts a less disturbing belief, instead, let's stress the survival aspect of the repetitive everyday life that does not allow for revolutionary change. Take a chill pill, will you? That's a popular saying today. Coping is then a result of the loss of the positive side of ideology as a belief system. And being in the world is reduced to killing time. It's time to go easy on the job and quit the hustle. Let's chill and check the socials. What are coping mechanisms anyway? In this light, copium can be anything, right? It's empty. It's an empty container. As long as it elevates the pain and is understood as a metaphorical opiate. While some associate it with subdued addictive substances and things like sports, sleep, porn, or food, copium can better be understood as an essentially digital time killer, such as binge watching series, endless doom scrolling, playing games, looking at TikTok videos, and so on, right? And do not forget all the senseless YouTube sessions you were in. Copium stands for vita non activa, right? It's of course reference to Hannah Arendt. The vita non activa, and provides relief from contemplation, giving your brain a break. What happens when worries go in circles and it has become impossible to make a decision, any decision? Apathy used to be a stigma, no longer. There is sympathy for the slacker. Everyone has had enough. This is the big difference from 30 years ago, when neoliberal positivism was still the norm, and the slacker was looked down upon as a lazy subcultural figure, languishing about as Generation X. The state of distraction today equals impulsive digital interactions that offload the anxieties onto another platform or app. Send an instant message, swipe to match on a dating site, comment on a post, and this will never bring rest or tranquility, let alone mindfulness. Coping is a defense mechanism in situations of stress. But what happens when this mechanism goes geopolitics and is further researched and applied by behavioral psychology and ultimately sold back to you through social media advertisement? The neuroscience enlightenment campaign has paid off. The workings of the brain's reward system is now common knowledge. Right? And this is something, while of course Catherine Malabou's neuroplasticity is not yet mainstream, a lot of the workings of today's brain in fact is, and you'll be surprised how many hundreds of millions are already aware of this, right? What we for a long time thought was kind of maybe exclusive academic knowledge, right? So patterns of cybernetic control have been recognized. The higher art of coping, which arises with all this technical, cynical reason, is at the same time a reflection on Mark Fisher's diagnosis of the state of frenzied status, right? And if somebody, has theorized coping or copium, it is, of course, Mark Fisher. Trying to make ends meet, you're a slave to money, and then you die. That's a quote of the Verve. Sure, hauntology is one option, but what happens when the nightmare returns, like in a groundhog night zone, right? Not the Groundhog Day, but the Groundhog Night, an ever-repeating nightmare. A story that, unlike Groundhog Day, would start all over again the moment the main character falls asleep. Will copium, a term once popular on Twitch and sometimes also called hopium, also interesting, hopium, only extend the nightmare? One wonders, will the digital papaver make the chain of disasters worse, or rather soften its mental impact? Or does it, in the saying of Kurt Vonnegut, work more like a painkiller, right? And I'm tending a bit more to that side, which, Kurt Vonnegut calls the aspirin of the people. So for a moment, rays of God beams are shining down from the clouds and then disappear in a glimpse. How are we doing with time? Yeah, maybe I'll stop here. I'm about halfway the text, so yeah.
It's up to you.
A bit too long, so
I think it's amazing. I'm really enjoying this a lot. So if you want, it's up to you what constraints you have after 4 o'clock. Feel free to go on a bit, and we can have a little break after that.
Yeah, I can. Who knows? I can read some more. I mean, it's the first time really that I'm presenting it, so for me it's also everything is new in that sense. So let me see. Yeah. According to therapists, we need to cope in order to deal with disadvantage or adversity. But once you run out of copium skills, there's always the copium itself as a last resort, right? And there I maybe present it like I said, like a real painkiller. This is the promise. Regression is a never-ending downward slope. We're thrown back to coping mechanisms after access to past and future gets blocked. There's a horror of the eternal presence of the now, the never-ending, monotonous every day, right? And nowadays, I associate very much the social media and the social media consumption with that monotonous every day, right? That people cannot escape. While everything appears to change, nothing does. Dealing with the world as it is has become a central issue, considering the easy way people flow in and out of existence into this world. What is your poison? There's an uncanny whirlpool of factors at play here that spins around as an empty core called the self. This is what happens when feelings of being undesired, unwanted, and isolation are experienced together on an industrial, cosmic scale. This is the late social media age of collective loneliness, also known as the not so widely recognized Turkle syndrome, right? Being alone together. Maybe you remember the book, right? It's in fact from 2011, which is interesting in this respect. But the issue is no longer being alone in the crowd, right? And that's, of course, a reference to The Lonely Crowd, that amazing book from 1953, if I'm right. The sad and lonely gather to muffle in the perception of pain, create quasi-communities with accompanying ideologies in an attempt to give it a sense of meaning, of living in the void. Whether there is an actual lack of actual social networks and personal emotional bonding or not is no longer relevant. The techno-social reality supersedes identity building of an outsider group. Once failure is democratized and becomes the general condition with multiple ways to express it, we need to look beyond this or that subculture and address the general techno-affect. Okay, there's the word affect. That's interesting. It still shows up in the text. I wasn't even aware of that. Okay, let's dig into a particular case. And I want to deal with that because this is an INC intern. Yeah, I have worked with her on this issue. In her research on young male incels and their online forums, Canadian researcher Kate Babin lists 4 factors for the lack of social cohesion that I will reinterpret here. Kate Babin starts with othering the in-group practice because of the rampant distrust between members on a forum. And this is very interesting, right? In these today's online forums, there is no longer, the bonding and the trust and the recognition. Enter an incel forum, and it's dominated by distrust, mutual distrust of people being together, right? Which is really awkward, to say the least. This reflex of exclusion mirrors a general lack of trust on platforms and can be seen as an internalization of surveillance and extractivism. One is never really alone online, or in a closed group for that matter. There are always big and small others, with capital others, virtually present that watch and follow in a semi-invisible manner. There is never really trust. The social feeling is a fake one, at best unreliable. On this overcrowded planet internet, coping is never just a solitary concern. Levels of paranoia in open networks are at an all-time high, while tacit activist knowledge on how to identify infiltrators and spy remains virtually non-existing. Large flocks of users are ready to disappear overnight, never been seen again. While in the past, this culture of uncertainty was associated with online anonymity, these days, social media make it so much easier to investigate who's behind this or that user name. At best, copium acts as a mask. If only one could see online comment culture as a masquerade ball during Venice Carnival, right? And this is a kind of a nostalgic dream that maybe one day we could go back to. But yeah, this is here we are. There you are. Yeah. The second element, clogging up the forum, is again an internal matter used to show engagement through minimal involvement. There's a pleasure in derailing an internal discussion or exchange like this and disrupt rational deliberation. I post, like, and share, therefore I am. When the signal-to-noise ratio tips, the power of discourse is momentarily disrupted in order to reproduce the community feeling. Shitposting, it's a word Germans love. It's not so widespread in other countries, but yeah. So it's a country that it's a term that you find everywhere in Germany, but not so much elsewhere. But okay, shitposting is the third factor Babin lists, an online jamming technique in a foreign feed, for instance, on YouTube or Twitter. And maybe you all remember that on this channel in Zoom, there were especially in the first wave of COVID, we all had these kind of Zoom invaders, these trolls that would have incredibly fun of dropping a porn image somewhat in a very serious academic debate, right? Okay, you remember. Often only one bad remark will suffice to end an online discussion and start an avalanche of engagement, a trick cultivated by the grifters that make up the troll industrial complex, right? And we know that this exists. It's paid by Putin and so on, right? Troll industrial complex actually exists. The advice of 1990s cyberculture, of which, of course, I was once part of, do not feed the trolls, did not scale up beyond the do-good hacker community and is nowadays largely unknown to mainstream users, right? All mainstream users will feed the troll, right? Surprise. An additional issue here is the absence of tools to moderate in elegant ways. Platformed communities are not equipped with the possibility to shield themselves as online environments are supposed to remain quite open with the aim to grow and to further accelerate the extractivism surrounded by ed tech. Closed groups simply do not have to deal with shitposters. The way users dealt with Zoom bombing during the COVID-19 years with the release of exclusive passwords to subscribed participants before the events or meetings shows how easy it is to shield off online exchanges, right? And it was kind of a surprise that it took so long in 2020 to figure this out. However, old media love to continue to report shitposting incidents as a sign of the decline of their so much hated medium called internet and society in general, of course. Instead of accusing adolescent others with immature behavior, it may be better to frame these acts as a part of an ideological conflict, a culture war, or more contemporary cyber warfare. Kate Babin's fourth and last characteristic is she called fatalism. By far the most interesting of her factors, as it invites us to compare fatum, yeah, the Latin fatum, with Jean Baudrillard's Fatal Strategies, the book published in 1983, and one of my personal Bibles, I have to admit. Kate Babin notes that, I quote, any positive mention of an interest or a hobby which presents an opportunity for members to connect with each other is instead diminished and labeled as cope. So that's the fatum. Here, let's discuss this. Software, community, community ties, the zeitgeist, the intel identity trap. In her conclusion, Kate Babin notes that the incel forum she investigated creates division within a subcultural community, leading to an absence of social support, low quality relationships, and extreme negative affectivity. There's the word again. Identity is identity is in this case is not celebrated as a liberation, but as an identity trap. Right. So identity is a paranoia trap. The fatality is a second order, a weaker version of Baudrillard's still romantic notion of the seductive, so-called evil side of the inevitable. Instead, what's experienced here is an unstable order to fabricated elements glued together in a temporary setting. Instead of fate, there is design. Fluidity is the opposite of predestination. The real existing attitudes confronted here are forms of confusion, which manifests as optimalism. I have the freedom to choose between a multitude of options and in the end cannot decide, right? So this is the kind of the optionalism, if you like, that we find around us everywhere. The impossibility to decide. As Timothy Morton noted, the outdoors is already indoors. The coexistence of me and the disasters is a reality. Timothy Morton describes problems that one can understand perfectly, but for which there is no rational solution. We are always wrong. Should the collapse be accelerated, or can the kategon restrainer, given its spread is popularly administered, be upheld, right? This is a reference to Carl Schmitt for those of you who are into his thinking. So the kategon restrainer. Is copium then, for instance, perhaps the kategon from below, right? So not from God or from whoever, but a kind of kategon from below, to uphold the inevitable, to uphold the disaster. Crowdsourcing efforts to delay the arrival of the Antichrist in this case. For instance, how will users cope with the internet mass extinction when billions of profiles get wiped out in a singular event? And this is a reference maybe to an earlier essay that I published half a year ago. It's called Internet Extinction. So if you're interested in that, it has a kind of a similar style and topic that I'm dealing with here. And in that essay, I more directly bring together the climate change and its mental impact with social media platforms and their architectures, and as two phenomena of today's contemporary culture. Yeah. So for a while, every disaster gets parked in our personal histories in a parallel trajectory. Until it no longer can, right? We will remember the summer of 23 as one of them, etc., right? Will it become necessary for public health and political activism reasons to start to design the collective psychic armor that will protect against the detrimental mental fallout of platform disasterism? And yeah, this is a reference to my most dear theorists that I learned from most, Klaus Teweleit, the author of Male Fantasies. And yeah, this book really shaped my biography. And I'm in this book, he is theorizing this concept of the psychic armor that protects one against the world. And in his particular case, he studied the fascist psychic armor from the 1920s and 30s. And I have always seen it as my task to study and describe how the psychic armor of today would look like. Disrupting habits, breaking consensus, and questioning power comes at a price and can best be done together. That's the power of the attacking herd, right? The attacking herd, remember? That's, of course, a reference to Elias Canetti, another one of my masters, and his crowds in power. So that's the power of the attacking herd and the tragedy of the loner. Better not to take action before, but after a new beginning. This can easily become a vicious cycle as what comes first. Beginnings are caused by concepts that transition into actions. Concepts that themselves are caused by scars. Okay, I want to leave it here. So I go into also in the work of Franco Berardi and his relation to copium and the current forms of stagnation. Okay, let's leave it here, and I'll go to some of the questions and the discussion.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gerd. This was a fantastic presentation, and also the first time ever that I thought good use was being made of PowerPoint.
Okay.
If only all PowerPoints could be like this, the world would be already a better place.
I see, yes.
I need to go back to, where do I see you all? Right, you are in my main screen.
I think Gerd has to close his
oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I will. We say goodbye to the PowerPoint. It's a never-ending PowerPoint, I can already tell you. So it just goes on and on.
The interesting subversive energy coming from the Netherlands, because we had Rosa Menkman a few sessions ago in the previous iteration of this seminar, who I know you know very well as well.
Yeah, she's my PhD student.
Yeah, so there was a nice energy, a synergy between your two presentations.
Oh, thank you.
They were not at all alike or about the same thing, but you can see the subversive energy coming from the Netherlands. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Yeah, we had. Let me close this here. You did a fantastic diagnostic tableau of what techno-capitalist rationality, how it conditions our psychic collective makeup to a certain extent.
Unfortunately, yes.
My first question to you.
I'm not happy about that, but
no, but it has to be done. It's part of the cure is to see what the disease is. My first question to you, I'm sorry that I anticipate, I take the first question here because others will have questions. So I will only ask this one.
That's fine.
Is once this diagnosis is made, how can we conceive of the potential that technology affords us as a collective means of mediation of our relationship with each other, with the world? How is it possible still to conceive of this techne and this technology outside of the ultimately the apocalyptic capitalist death drive that came through so powerfully in your talk?
Yeah, I do think so, because for me, it's so much connected to the the dreadful orchestration of and manipulation, the extractivism, and all its nasty agendas of these platforms. And yeah, I'm still call me naive, but yeah, I still believe that smaller, more focused networks, and maybe they will be or have to be autonomous networks, like the New Center. The New Center is not owned by Facebook. It is not running on at least you try to build new forms of online sociality, right? And so the New Center itself is a good example that this is still possible. However, for most people, they do not have these kinds of examples, and less so. And there are no real tools available. So you need to be so I wouldn't say techno or tech savvy, because it's not really anymore about, like in the 90s, that you had to be a hacker or a programmer or something like that. But still, you need to have some kind of energy together and awareness that if you're using the hegemonic platforms, this will, limit your possibilities, not only in an incredible way, but also have this impact. So, I think it's definitely possible to break out of it. Yeah, since a very long time, I also write, of course, about what I call European offline romanticism, right? And it is still possible, to go and retreat in nature or something like that, or do a mindfulness retreat on the weekend or something like that. But this is not what I consider an option, right? And of course, it's very strong, the belief in it, especially in Germany, the country in Europe that I know best. And so, but yeah, so this offline option is not one. I don't believe that simply pulling out the plugs, etc., walking away from it will make any difference.
It's also interesting that the wellness and mindfulness movement, including yoga and meditation and so forth, has developed towards quite a right-wing phenomenon. When you mentioned romanticism, it just made me realize it kind of plays that romanticism also has been a kind of homos for the development of ideology.
Yeah, that's true. Wait.
With fascist, the right-wing ways of the world.
I just wanted to take this, because this is a recent book.
Excellent title. I saw the title only for a second. It's kind of conspirituality. Excellent.
Yeah, conspirituality, and so this is of course dealing with this phenomena, and maybe a bit more popularized way. Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, the book that just came out, that is now a bestseller, in part also deals with this.
Oh, I need to open the door. I'm really sorry. I will let everyone else get into the questions.
No problem.
Please do go ahead with the questions, everyone else, and Freya can perhaps moderate for a sec. I'll be back.
Yeah. Yeah, wait. Yeah, I just wanted to show this. So, okay. Yeah, next question. Go ahead.
Hi, I read your the internet extinction before this as well, and sort of the nature of the presentation. I guess I was wondering, sort of jumping off of Cécile's question, like in the presentation where sort of there's this part in your essay where you're talking about kind of like the void and like entering the void and these different people who theorize just you have to accept it, you have to go there, through there is some sort of answer which might be death. And in your presentation too, we're sort of like inundated by the sort of techniques that you're describing as being negative techniques, or and we don't want to theorize simply like a positive escape. So do you think that there's something, even like some dialectical method you see at work in terms of an answer to this? Do you know what I'm maybe?
Yeah, the absence of the of dialectics. Yeah, if only. Yeah, I would love that. You know, I come from the Frankfurt School, and I still, you know, see myself as a person who works in that tradition.
Yeah, there was something in the method where it was being transformed, the materials.
I know. But to be honest, I don't think you know, an individual or a person like me or a theorist or something like that will be able to formulate this. You know, I think what we need is a new culture, a new renaissance, maybe, of a culture of experimentation. Because at the moment we're just absolutely stuck on the platform, and people don't know how to escape this. And I think the only way is just a bit more regional, local forms of new beginnings, of a reconstitution of the social, if you like, or reconstitution of the techno-social, because I believe that even though we despise the platforms, a new configuration of the social will have to be somehow a techno-social reconfiguration. I don't see, you know, that this celebration of all going offline, leaving behind all the digital tools and you know, possibilities that we have, including, of course, this one, right? Including all the sophisticated technologies that the new center at the moment, as we speak, as we are doing this class, you know, is utilizing. Think of all the cables and data centers that we are using at this very moment. I don't think that this will have to be or should be given up.
Just quickly, I don't think there are any presentations today, because we hadn't talked about the whole presentation setup yet, and I haven't sent a presentation sheet around.
That's completely fine. Because we only have 4 sessions, I just wanted to ask. That means we have the time that we want now. We are completely free to continue discussing, and it depends on you, Gerd, how much time you have. So I think we make the most of the time you have. Normally, we would have a break and then come back and discuss more. But I know that
I'll have to. I have another meeting. Yes,
we'll make the best of how much time you have, and when you have to go, we'll have a little break.
No, let's do a few more questions, and then I'll have to go. Hello. Yeah, Anja,
Hi. I wanted to discuss about the aspect, because you talked about depression and the numbness within this context. But I want to bring a question about mania, because in the manic depressive spectrum, and in this context, that if we think about the symptoms of manic depression, about rampant thought loops, about deductive thoughts, and about all these things, are we in a place within this context to decide whether we are numb or frenzy? Are we able in this stage to articulate a sustainable way to diagnose our state of mentality within this context? Like how can we say whether it's numbness and stillness, or whether it's a frenziness and a manic?
I try to avoid medical terms, and this maybe has a little bit to do with the bad examples and maybe the higher awareness we have also in the let's say in the design scene, in the scene of hackers and programmers, to use medical terms as leading metaphors for anything, for design, but even for our critique, for that matter. So, of course, you could say, or one could say, capitalism is in its manic, depressed stage, right? Yeah. Okay, well, we can discuss that, and then, but in the inline context, there is this problem that you deal with users, you deal with in the last instance with people, and I would never say that let's say 2, 3, 4 billion people are in a manic depressed state. This is simply not very productive. But however, what you just said is much more interesting. You used two let's say confronting terms, right? Frenzy
and numb.
Yeah, and numb, right? And now then suddenly something very interesting starts to happen, because we see both of them around in online cultures on a massive scale. That we see the numbness in the sense of people no longer responding anymore, right? The whole internet was supposed to be an interactive setup, right? But yeah, effectively it has turned into an online television set. And statistics show that more than 85% of all internet traffic is numbed, video traffic with zero interaction whatsoever, right? And that's, of course, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all the rest, right? So, yeah, in that sense, online culture has become numb. On the other hand, yes, frenzy is a kind of another element, and I would say the frenziness comes when we're going out, when we have to go to work, when we have to deal with others in the public space, when we have to deal with politics or what's going on in the world, right? Then suddenly you see this kind of 24/7 frenzy, which is incredible in terms of the avalanche of news and messages, and where people can't cope anymore, and both of them are true. And And then it becomes very interesting to, to bring them together, this friendliness and the resulting numbness. Okay, next question, maybe.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I can.
So I was really intrigued by your distinction between affect and emotion, because I think that there's something really crucial here. So I was wondering if you can explain. I wasn't really aware of like what the difference is, but also because I think that that's the problem. Like we're trained to use our minds, but we're not trained on how to deal with our emotions.
Yeah, but this can only be done biographically because, from the study of internet cultures, it was always said that the affects are real, and we find them in films and we find them in the grand gestures of the 21st century, right? But there is no affect in online communication, right? But this is kind of it's more biographical, I would say. It's a certain generation that has kind of cultivated the theory of affect, and they didn't want to deal with the online billions whatsoever, right? So affect is something that is more maybe for high culture or something like that, and emotions. When you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with the low people, with the ordinary people.
Yeah, maybe
I never bought into this, right? I never bought into this. I said bullshit. Huh?
You distinguish also between emotion and feeling, like they do in psychology?
No, emotion and feeling is something else. And that's a much more interesting one. And I think there you don't see those kind of competing kind of theory schools where an emotion and feeling is something that is much more dealt with in psychoanalysis, in psychology today. So yeah, in that sense, a more interesting one, and feeling is probably a little bit more restrained, and emotion is something a bit more expressed, is a bit more out there. And in online culture, of course, you find both, right? We just discussed numbness and frenziness, and there you see how the two relate, and they correspond to each other.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in because you mentioned the sort of problematic nature of what the people call the new age industry or the feeling good industry, all of that. But actually, in we can look for ways or different types of psychoanalysis that allow us, there's different cultural systems that have very much analyzed and thought through like how to deal with emotions. So there are these systems and they can be accessed online, so I'm just thinking about this like not just to look at Western psychoanalysis, but to really respect these alternative systems. Maybe they're co-opted by right-wing systems, but at the same time, they have these long-term traditions of also dealing with emotions communally, maybe with the use of psychedelics, maybe, all sorts of different aspects of how to deal with emotions that we really need.
But then you enter a world already of alternatives, and I think this is where we have to go.
Yeah, I mean.
But at the same time, we have to try to understand how we can unstuck and how we can get rid of the current situation. And there, in my view, what I said at the end of my talk, these kind of new forms of experimentation is where we should head. And you just mentioned a few of them.
Freya, you've got your hand up?
Yes, I also had a question. I was thinking that the diagnosis that you made was reminded me strongly of that of Bernard Stiegler, which he calls disruption, right? Where he has where he develops concept of a nihilism that is that is co-emerging with the technologies, especially the digital technologies that we have. And I know that what's currently actually interesting me a lot is that he's got this figure called Florian in The Age of Disruption and the Anthropocene, and I think a couple of earlier books as well, where he where he says that the danger of this disruptiveness is that we might go mad because we have no collective attentions, and because we have nothing to look forward to, because the apocalypse is all around us, right? And I think for me, you sort of opened a different perspective on this, which is this numbness instead of going mad and producing violence. And I think even in earlier texts like Symbolic Misery, he's also mentioning this film Elephant with the school shooters, and I was then thinking, because this summer in Germany there were also a lot of debates around the Gen Z. They don't want to work anymore, they want 4 days a week working now and all of that. And I only marginally follow that, but I know that there were also some debates about, it's like, we've got no prospects anymore. We probably won't have any pension, there's no security in it. And now these things start to change, and there are some sorts of values attached that Stigler didn't really see, because I feel like there are a couple of moments at the moment where there is no madness, but there's actually a complete change of values. So instead of saying there is no, we don't have any collective pretensions, we are not going to have families or political ideals or prospects in work, actually the whole way these structures are built are currently also changing. And I find that really interesting as like a small patch of light, perhaps. And I was wondering how you would think also perhaps about Florian and Stigler related to your own project.
Yeah, very much so. But for me, my work is done in dedication to his legacy. However, maybe I'm a bad scholar. I do not have to, repeat his precise vocabulary to show, my deep affection and intellectual, commitment to his project. And I think that we have to overcome these kinds of excluding intellectual debates. If you're not on this side, you're on that side, etc., etc. Right? I strongly believe in school building, and maybe even the new center is an example of school building, in which you kind of group together in a certain direction, without this very narrow and very poisonous kind of, if you don't use the correct this or that term, you're out, or even if you criticize someone else, you're a dissident, you're no longer, this kind of intellectual culture that I find very, very debilitating. And there's so many urgencies, right? And I emphasize the urgency that is out there, and also all the not yet explored or even defined fields of study that are out there. Right, we don't have to pretend that we're in a small ghetto. We're part of an immense new world, and that even excites me in the sense, even this day. We're preparing some new texts. For instance, I just read one, just to give you an example about a big phenomena in China. It's called breakup apps, right? These are people are using to break up, and there's a whole world behind that. also there's a whole, a history kind of another essay that comes out with us shortly on the sad girl, which I kind of touch upon in my work, but not really. And in that sense, and then there's the whole metaphor of that Bogna is using, and so many others, like the dark forest, which is also opening up, and this opening up of new critical conceptual fields is, I think, what excites me, and what young people are concerned with, and no longer the theoretical policing of others.
It's so good to hear that. It's balsam for my heart because I think you're right with the new center, and the new center sets an example as well for networks like this. The Collège International de Philosophie was a place like this, is still founded in the 80s.
Yeah. At some point, I was also part of the European Graduate School, and there was moments there when we had that feeling. So, of course, I also built some, still online communities, like the NetTime mailing list that was founded in '95 and still exists as a thriving intellectual community with
your own center as well, and
my own center.
They all have in common is this desire for intersectional thinking, to come outside of the academic exegesis of text and the kind of owning of authors, owning of thinkers as if they were territories colonized.
Okay. Well, let's continue the conversation and leave it here. I say goodbye, and let's talk soon.
Massive thank you. Really, thank you very much. This is so enjoyable and lovely. I hope we have you back here on the program very soon.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye, Kat.
Bye.
Oh, that was awesome. I think you all deserve a break, if you like, unless you have a pressing question or a pressing comment before we break up for a little. How much time do we have? I would say maybe 10-minute break. Is that good? Yeah, and we'll be back at 40, and then we can discuss a little bit the essays and the presentations. And yeah, we don't have a presentation for today, but we'll have a few things more to talk about.
But you probably mean 50, right? Or did I hear you wrong?
What did I
say? I think you said 40, but now I'm not so sure. But we're going to meet at 50.
Never believe me when I say a day or number, because I just always automatically say them wrong. And I don't know why that is. I think I have something like a number dyslexia or something like this. I know there's a special word for it, but to be honest, I don't think I even have that excuse. I just say numbers wrong all the time. So yeah, in 10 minutes.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay. That's my coffee. Sorry. I lost my coffee. Is everyone back? Few people still needing a break. Okay, I would suggest we spend a bit more time with the questions and discussions that might still be left over from Gert's presentation. I saw that there were a few comments in the chat as well. And then we reserve 20 minutes to talk about the essay and presentations and get you all, while we discuss, if you could all at the same time multitask and look at the texts in the syllabus, including the text for today's session, and sign up for the presentation slots. I'm not too fussed about having to do the presentation about the text for the specific session. So you could, as far as I'm concerned, present one of Gert's texts in one of the next sessions. Just choose a text that you like and choose a date that is convenient for you. But it would be really awesome if as many of you could try and do the presentations during the seminars, which is much nicer than sending in a video as far as I'm concerned, because then I have to watch them by myself. We don't get to discuss them. So I think that would be awesome. So while we discuss a bit more, have a look at the syllabus, choose a text, and choose a time slot on the sheets. Are the sheets available, Freya?
No, I still have to create the spreadsheet, but I write it down and then I will send the spreadsheet around after the session, and I will already enter the people who have said what text they wanted to do during the seminar, and then they can check again if I entered it in the right spot. Perhaps we could do it like that.
Yeah, I think what we should do is take notes about
is that what you meant, Cécile?
Yeah, I think what we should do now then, if we don't have the sheet yet, is to for each of you to choose a date that is convenient to you to do your presentation. We are 30 people signed up, right? We're 26 people in the seminar now, so that's 24. If everyone does the presentation, you do the maths, divided by 4 is how many per session? I should do this, but I'm too lazy. That's 24 divided by 4. This is a test, yeah? You are being graded on this. Okay, I'm going to have to calculate this myself. What is this? 4?
I think, wait, let me check. Okay, so I think, yeah, we're 28 people, actually.
I know we have only 3 sessions. We have only 3 sessions left, right? So that's 9 people roughly per session. Yeah? 9, 18, 27. So that would mean ideally we should have 3 to 4 presentations with you guys teaming up. So each presentation is normally between 10 and 20 minutes long. In this case, I would say 3 people team up together to do a presentation, 3 to 4 people. Yeah, and we have, no, if we have 3 presentations of 3 people, that would be good. So ideally, that's a bit more complicated then, because we need to find people who want to present on the same texts. Why don't we? I'm going to draw up the syllabus and we can discuss that in about, I would say in about 10 minutes. So we have enough time to set this up, because it's, for me, this is really part of the success of the seminar, because the more you guys bring yourselves in, not only is it really good training to present and talk, I think this is a really fundamental aspect of being engaged in intellectual exchange. And it's also really interesting for everyone else. It has on occasion been the case that the presentations students did on the texts from the syllabus were more clear than the presentations themselves. I'm not going to say which ones, but it is sometimes the case. So they are also incredibly helpful and useful, and they generate more discussion. So I think this is what we're going to do. Shall we go ahead? Is there other more thoughts or questions from Gert's, arising from Gert's presentation? I saw that there was a really cool comment by Lane. I haven't seen yeah, there's Lane, I don't know if you want to read that out yourself or reiterate it. I looked up the text. It was actually really interesting. You touch on a subject that I think is incredibly relevant.
Well, I randomly stumbled up in this text some time ago, and basically it's claiming that we have two kinds of science fiction at the moment. One is scap picking, so kind of dystopic most of the times, and the other one is hack boxing, and mostly from a young queer community, and that while scap picking usually produces kind of decent critiques of the current reality in a way, that it is not that likely that something new will come out of it, because it's something we do in science fiction since at least the early 80s, or before, and so that it might be more likely that out of this idea of hack boxing actually is coming something which provides a completely new take that is shaking the basis we have right now. And I thought it would relate a lot to how Getlofink himself was on the scap picking side again, like reproducing the memes online in the theory itself, and while it gives a good idea of how those social media memes work in reshaping certain emotion states or a certain atmosphere, I think it lacks in the way of actually seeing what is happening at the same time while using this, and also the way how people are using these social networks in a way which I think is not necessarily always the stuff that is happening on the surface, but it's also just like private messages, for example, which weren't addressed at all. And with these private messages, at least for me, that's the way how I can keep in contact with people that left from the cities I was living in, even though I might not have the phone number anymore, or they changed the phone number or something. And I think there's, so I think there is something that is missing from just looking on how those networks work on the surface structure in a way.
And what struck me particularly about your comment is that these two ideas, scab picking and hug boxing, which I wanted to just, scab picking for me is quite intuitive. I get it. It's almost a form of self-pitying or lamentation, a form of critique as self-pitying, and to say it really crudely. Whereas hug boxing, the term is a bit less intuitive to me. Maybe you can explain that a bit, but to the extent that I think I understood it, it struck me that it is a very good vocabulary to accentuate the trends in contemporary philosophy and theory as well, not just in science fiction output and production. Is that on the one hand you have forms a bit in the history and in the line of critical theory, and I think there's a kind of Heideggerian strand as well that is on the scab picking side and kind of entropy and everything is going to shit. And on the other hand, you have this kind of sometimes a bit mushy we have to imagine new horizons, but sometimes it doesn't really go beyond the request for new content. It's like, let's do something new. And if you say that 10 times, it doesn't mean that someone is actually saying something new. I don't know. I thought that was really good. Can you say just something about where does this word hugboxing? Do you know where it comes from, or what is it supposed to? I get the hugging, and I don't get the hug box thing.
I don't actually know where it's coming from, but I would suppose it's exactly this. Like, you go to a conference or you go online, and everything you get is like positive. Everything is positive. Nothing is critical. Everything is saying that was an amazing talk. Everything is fine. Everything is great. It's so nice how your identity plays out. It's so cool how you present, and so all you get is positive all the whole time. Everything is getting hugs. So for everything you're doing, in a way.
Yeah. And I think there's another element that it made me think in terms of philosophy. It's that the term speculation is sometimes used as synonymous with wishful thinking or a hopeful disposition that someone will come up with a new idea, and as if expressing that hope was already a form of saying something new. I think there's something like this going on. Very interesting. I think there was one question in the chat as well from Clara, who can't use her mic. I don't know if that's still the case. Still doesn't work. By the way, I kept looking at your window and was thinking, is this a clever kind of algorithmic background that looks like you're in a car with this changing landscape, or you're actually driving through the place? It looked amazing, really interesting. So you said in Extinction Internet, you also, Gert, mentioned investigative aesthetics. I'd love to hear some examples of art projects or artists you believe are good representations of this practice. So I will put the question to him when maybe he'll answer by email. But in the meantime, I don't know I think it's a good question for the group. If any one of you can come up with examples or projects of artists that you believe represent investigative aesthetics.
Well, I think the first one that comes to mind is forensic architecture.
Wow, yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe like through documentary, also like subjectivity reproduction, perhaps I think is a term that they also deal with, but perhaps also metahaven, I'm not sure.
Again? Can you say the last bit again?
I remember a term they also utilize is subjectivity reproduction, and how documentary and video essays, for example, their evidentiary value reproduce subjectivities, or try to reach a common, I think a common truth they call it, or a consensus. I'm also thinking of metahaven now, so too.
Yeah, cool. Any other responses to this from your own backgrounds or in your own environments? Anybody else can think of examples of this investigative aesthetics?
I just posted Alan Warburton, and I think he used to be a CG animator for like films and commercials and stuff, but he's kind of switched to these video essays, which I think are really interesting. You all can check that out. I think
I didn't hear the name. I think I don't know if my videos are right, but
Alan Warburton. I posted a link to his website in the chat, but I think it's along the same lines. I think if you're into like Medhaven and forensic architecture, I think it's a pretty interesting take on contemporary CG animation and stuff.
Yeah, super. Absolutely. Maybe
also territorial agency. I was thinking that it's somehow similar to forensic architecture, and they are working with images synthesizing data. So they're trying to make big data flows accessible to let's say, wider audiences through artistic productions. And they do a lot of research on extractivism, on ocean deep mining, and they're pretty an interesting example of this kind of aesthetic, let's say.
Very nice. I'm just looking through the very, very cool. Oh, amazing. Thanks for all the resources. How does it work with the chat? Is that still available in the recording, or do you know, in the archived recording, does it show the chats in the side?
I think you can access it in the classroom.
Okay, it would be nice not to lose that actually. Maybe we can, is it possible to copy this on a sheet and put it in the syllabus, or to put it somewhere in our folder?
I know I get an email after every session that says that it shows up in the classroom.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, with all the links and everything intact.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, good. Cool. Amazing. Yeah, because there's a lot in there also that, I mean, some obviously I'm familiar with, but some I see for the first time. So really interesting. Be cool to look these up. Was there any other response to Gerd, or question or comment?
Yeah, hi. May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So for me, it was not clear how Mark Fisher is a theorist of coping, because I can imagine that it's something about this postmodern nostalgia and nostalgic reproduction of this is what all this ontological thing is about, but I don't see like any more clear relationships between those coping practices and Mark Fisher writings. Maybe someone has any idea as to how they are related more concretely?
I think it sounded to me like he meant more the atmosphere of an analysis of an age of melancholia, or of a generation steeped in melancholia and in the need for a kind of copium, rather than being in the kind of active production of mentality of copium. I think, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it wasn't a kind of straightforward example. It's just more of a thought that is contemporaneous with Fisher's analysis of melancholia as a kind of socio-political, economic, generalized collective mental state. But that's how I understood it. How did everybody else see the connection, or not at all? Or
I thought it's all about capitalistic realism, when everything you can do is also becoming the part of the whole system. And I think this idea of copium and coping is again something that you're trying to do with your melancholia or depression, if it's Mark Fisher's topic, and then it's just eating itself.
Yeah, interesting, because even that becomes a form of commodity flow. Very. I had one curiosity that I wanted to ask you guys, because many of you are more likely to be in the kind of generational bracket that Gerd was talking about, which is neither his nor mine, even though he and I are not completely the same generation. I wondered if you felt that this characterization was timely. Do you think it was in phase, or rather out of sync with the way that you would assess your own generation's, I don't know what, rootedness in this moment that he described, more historical phase rather? Natasha.
Yes. I think I felt this gap, and not only generational, but maybe gender specific. I don't know, because for me it sounded to be technophobic, because I myself, I'm coming from more cyber-feministic, xenofeminist perspective, so I kind of embrace the voids, or embracing the cyber. And I myself, I have a practice of grief posting on Twitter. So I really I name it grief posting, because, and I'm sharing my affects, and I surely know that it's my coping strategy with my grief. And I think that just stating that, again, just the part of the whole capitalistic process, and it's all the platform that is taking or our emotions. I think it's kind of technophobic for me. So I don't know. It's very interesting to me what others think, because I understand, of course, this copium as opium and addiction, and I'm not very optimistic about this strategy, online strategy, but anyways, yeah, I think I'm more positive about this.
What is everybody else's feeling about this, or perception, or even more specifically, when you yourselves engage in curatorial projects or in your own artistic projects, to what extent do you feel you would be in phase with the analysis that Gerd proposed of our historical moment, or do you feel that there is a kind of déphasage, phase shift, that also signals to a certain extent our situatedness? Freya?
Well, I think I also try to hint at that a bit in my comment earlier, because I think, especially from this, which is also in the syllabus of the seminar, this notion of the pharmakon, which is also so used by Stiegler, right? I think Stiegler, for example, he's got difficulties of grasping the pharmacology of disruption. You know, for him, disruption is somehow more destructive and doesn't have this this remedy aspect to it. But I think also then, I mean, especially because of all the analytical aspects that he develops, like the absence of collective pretensions. I'm really wondering how that can be something positive as well, perhaps. And I think for me, there's also this generational gap, because I tried to mention earlier that I think there are interesting moments of people using this concept of disruption to create other values. But then again, it is still based on the general idea that there is something as a disruptive experience at the moment. And I think this is how I would position it. But I think it was Natasha. I also totally agree with her on the gender aspects as well.
Yeah, I felt something like that as well. One of the things that came to my mind was also the different cultural inflections. There has been, on the one hand, this economic, socioeconomic, political, not political, rather socioeconomic, psychosocial phenomenon of quitting in the United States, the Great Resignation, which had a relevant economic impact from logistics and truck drivers all the way to office workers, and so blue collar, white collar workers, thinking that there is no point to push so hard to improve your situation if you can actually live with less. And expose yourself less to the economic hardship of an ideal of the betterment of your economic situation. It doesn't seem to be a viable option for some segments of many segments of the society. And on the other hand, in China, this moment of Tang Ping, which recently actually a sinologist really slapped me down when I mentioned this, is someone who's based, I think, in Hong Kong. And when I mentioned this, he said, that's just rubbish and that's not going to go anywhere and there's nothing revolutionary in it. And I thought, well, actually, it's something that has an economic impact. It's something that's important enough for the government to take notice and censor the kind of t-shirt, what do they call merchandise that starts to come up with lay back and don't struggle and strive anymore. I don't know. Yeah, I think there is something interestingly, quietly very subversive in this form of subtraction that also has, I think, probably a kind of undercurrent philosophical heritage, not in a kind of direct lineage, but resonance is perhaps the better word. Sorry, Elaine, go ahead.
Now that you mentioned Tang Ping, I was thinking of, there's also this movement by Lan, probably pronounced wrong, which means let it rot. So it emerged out of Tang Ping, but it's like more punkish in a way. And I think that's a little bit of what I was missing, that the focus is going towards like, I really like Klaus Teweleit, but it shifts the focus to just read what is happening right now as Nietzschean, as something that's proto-fascist, while I think there is a classist notion in thinking it this way, because it's thinking it from like techno-optimism and techno-pessimism. I think both read the current techno-economic developments from a middle-class perspective, while if we're thinking from a surplus proletarian perspective, I think it's going more into the direction of which ways are there to destroy what is existing, and not out of a loss of moral, out of a loss of, like, not from this Nietzschean way, but more from the perspective from that it's just survival. That if your reality is so based on survival, you can, there is no way for you to be provided survival in the system anymore. The only way is to let it go rot.
I think it's quite interesting to see to look at this seriously and not think that because it's not a kind of a major mounted revolt or revolution in direct kind of up in arms conflict, that it's still statistically relevant, perhaps even more so than some demonstrations. I don't know what impact 1 million people in a march have on economic data, but this Tang Ping movement and the Great Resignation they dealt a massive blow, actually. So yeah, it's interesting. I think important to observe it with an open mind. I think your point about a kind of class window of your perspective on the situation, it was something that came to my mind when Gerrit mentioned Stigler and the demoralization of the white middle class, which is essentially a kind of Western American European, middle class eye on it. I don't know to what extent you can. This is even in dialogue with other perspectives on the shifting ground, also in terms of geopolitics and world economics. The shift of relevance towards Asian economies is something that perhaps some Westerners of a certain generation feel very worried about, the loss of importance, which is also slightly gendered as a problem, because I don't know if everyone is so worried about this in the same way. Patrick, go ahead.
I just had a comment in terms of like the experience of his presentation, that like the collection of memes and things like that I thought were pretty like I thought they well represented sort of like what people like our age find and like sort of know as funny. Like I found that interesting, that there were ones where like without even thinking about it, it popped up and I was just like, I get it. And that's like the one with the Teletubbies and the cat, and it's like pointing at the cat, and like just things like that where it's like,
didn't get that at all. What does that even mean?
It doesn't mean anything. And I think it's like just totally ironic, and like in terms of an investigative aesthetic, it's like, we found the cat, we found it, and it doesn't mean anything. But so much of that is wrapped up in this sort of like ironic nihilism, and so I thought that was well represented. I don't know how, I thought he spoke to it well in terms of like the melancholic aspect and like the ways that it might play out. But I do think, and this was a question I wanted to ask you, was this like, to me, I'm just curious, most of what I've read about the difference between like affect and emotion is actually from the latter part of the individuation book, the Simon Dunn. And I was curious how you would apply that in terms of like if affect is a useful category, because I found that sort of like pre-emotive, just sort of like laugh, that the question is like chicken or egg, I guess, like whether I've been conditioned to like just find that laughable. I don't know where that comes from, but just a sort of a small point.
I think what I pick up from what you say is something that I felt throughout his presentation, is that while he was talking to a very apocalyptic theme, the whole presentation was actually also hilarious in a way that made me think of the kind of Greek cynicism, the dog philosopher, the kind of Diogenes that tells Alexander, get out of the light, you know, I don't need to get out of my barrel. There was something, I really cried a great sense of humor, I think, there. In on the one hand, not, it wasn't quite, what was the word, scab picking. So it was scab picking, but with a sense of humor that actually totally undermined the real self-pitying ethos or pathos that this could have. So I wonder if it's in that sense of humor and real kind of revival of Greek cynicism indirectly. So if you would say that, for example, the 90s and capitalist bust and boom attitudes were cynical in a way that has nothing to do with Greek cynicism. It was just like a kind of drug dealer cynicism. If I don't do it, somebody else will do it. Whereas here you've got a really subtle play with a sense of humor that is, on the one hand, not shying away from the ridiculousness of how capitalism is panning out for people, and ridiculousness and tragedy of it too, but at the same time with a sense of humor that I think has quite a lot of potential in terms of emancipatory potential. Is that what you...
Yeah, I guess I might continue to that, like the nature of the meme though is such that it prevents our like what did he call it, like communal loneliness, like we all sense that, but we don't have a language for it. We all just know by this representation that it's something we all understand as like a generation that's been subjected to this, or also created it, you know. We also like made all these memes. You can whip 20 of them up in like 5 minutes, and there is something that's productive collectively about that in terms of like a psyche, but it's also, it doesn't have, maybe it does through Mark Fisher and stuff, but I don't find it to necessarily like in its experience have a philosophical language.
Yeah.
I think it actually prevents it, like the nature of its irony, like the nature of the meme doesn't want you to talk about it. You're just supposed to get that like this image
can I have an essay on this, please, from someone, from you maybe? I think I would really love that. And I think one now, oh God, we're doing it again. We're already running out of time now, but I want to hear from Ivan, and then I want all of you to shoot out of the gun straight away. I need 9 people for the next presentation sign up, and the next session we get 9 people for the next one. So just be ready to to sign up. So Ivan or Ivan?
Yeah, I think that Ivan would be better, but both are good. Yeah, just a small note on the in the Institute of Network Cultures, of which Geert is a director, they have critical meme reader, and there are at least 3 volumes of it, and well, those are kind of case studies of like from different authors from a bunch of different contexts from different countries, but they usually have a very useful introductory chapters, and in one of those chapters, I don't really remember its authors, they were talking about the kind of asemic nature of memes. So it's kind of semantics without really natural language semantics. So it's something like pre-semantical in a sense. So maybe
super interesting. I mean, that connects with what Patrick was just saying, and something I had in the back of my mind. One of the reasons why, for my generation, you know, maybe I'm slower than other people of my generation, I can't really get into Instagram because I don't understand this rain of images. I get the kind of minimal text bit in what used to be Twitter. I don't get what it has become now, but yeah, there's a really quite important shift happening, and I wonder what the ramifications of this will be. The texts you referred to, do you know if they're available on open access or?
Yeah, they're open source. Yeah.
Well, if you can you put the link in the chat? That would be really awesome.
I'll try to find it real quick.
Okay, I would say we quickly jump now to the presentation sheet. I think we have one now, because Freya just quickly created one, which is really awesome. Did I get that right, Freya?
With everyone now, but the problem is that we only have, I included Gert's text now into the next for the next session, so that we have 2 texts for each session, but that means I don't know how we do this if we have 9 people for each session, because that would mean we would need 4 to 5 people for each text instead of 3.
That's totally fine, because then I would just say that we have so we have 2 texts. That means we have 3 people per text, and plus we have we have 3 people who talk to each other and choose a text that they want to talk about, and it could be related. It has to be somehow related to the seminar, but it can be. I trust you guys that you come up with something relevant. Should we do like this? So then that would be rather a matter then of 3 people deciding to work together on a random basis and then deciding what text they want to work with. I think we can do this. Can we open? So do you have the link here? If you all click on the link, what is session 2, Traductio? This is going to be with my colleague from the Collège International de Philosophie, Philippe Lacour. Can I have people jumping, saying, yeah, I'm going to do next week. It's really short, and if we have 3 presentations of 10 minutes each, that means each of you only talking for 3-4 minutes. That's writing something like 400 or 500 words. It's also good practice. It's like the equivalent of writing a little abstract. That would be like your chunk of the presentation. I think it's really doable in a week.
Cécile, I'm in for that.
I can also jump in.
Fantastic, thanks.
Yeah, Johannes and Marco.
So
we'd be doing the Geert text next week. I would do that one. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. So who's just, that was Patrick just speaking, yeah? So Johannes and Marco, do you want to work on the Geert text? Is that good for you?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick. So we need 6 more. We need one more set of 3 working, I suppose, then on.
I think Clara is also waving.
Text. Clara, fantastic.
I've got to run, everybody. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks for your contribution. See you next week. Clara, would you work on Philippe's text? Did Philippe provide 1 or 2 texts? Do you know, Freya?
Sorry, who's Philippe?
Philippe Lacour is the next speaker. He's got his introduction.
No, he had one text, so I added Gert's text as the second one.
Oh, yeah, okay. So we've got his then. So Clara, you're okay with working on the traductio text for next session? Where is she gone? Oh, can't see her anymore. Ah, there you are, and you can't use your microphone. Just thumbs up is okay. Good. Okay, so we need two more people for Philippe Lacour's text on open platform technologies for translation.
No, that's the. I thought we got these now. I thought for Philippe's text we've got Johannes, Marco, and Clara now, right? Yeah. And then for text we need 2 more people.
Oh, I thought Patrick, Marco, and Johannes were doing Gert's text. No, did I get that wrong?
I think Johannes said in the chat he wanted to work on Philippe's text, but I'm not sure about Marco.
You me too. Yeah, on Philippe's text.
Ah, okay. So Patrick wanted to do Gert. Okay. So we have Johannes, Marco,
and Clara as well.
Working on Philippe's text, yeah? Yeah. And then Patrick and 2 more people on Gert's text.
I can hop in on that one as well.
Very nice, thanks. And just 1 more person. Be brave. Sorry, I feel like an animator in a children's party. Come on, because we still need 3 people for an undisclosed text. Ah, okay, Clara wanted to do Lovink as well. So why don't we do that? Because there's nobody, we're doing the rules ourselves. So I would say Patrick, Aaron, sorry, what did I write here? Yeah, Patrick, Aaron, and Clara are doing Gert's text. Philippe's text is Johannes, Marco, and 1 more person who's happy to do the traductio.
I can do that.
Sorry, who's
Jacopo.
that? Jacopo, where are you? Ah, yeah, here you are. Okay, fantastic. Good. And then we need 1 more, 3 people who talk to each other and find a text that is that you decide on, that is kind of relevant to the seminar overall. Through, it doesn't have to be relevant specifically to one of the sessions, but that you think contributes to the description of the seminar. Lane, I'm not looking at you. You want to do that?
I actually thought of doing the text a feminist cognitive practice later, because it felt relevant to what I'm trying to write.
Sorry, is that a text from the syllabus? I should look at the syllabus.
Yes, it is.
Sorry?
It is from the 4th session.
From the 4th session. Okay, then I'm not gonna. Did I get the calculation wrong, by the way? Do we really need 9 people per session if we have 3? Yeah, we do. So that's a lot of people. Just need 3 more people to come together and decide together on a text you want to present together. Sorry, this is awkward. Okay, while you find your courage, I will say a couple of words about the essays, and then we'll wrap up in 5 minutes, and hopefully 3 more of you sign up for next week. Because otherwise we're going to just explode the space for the seminar presentations in the last 3, because we're actually quite a lot of people in this seminar. So the essays, I would like you all just to notice a few basic things. One is I would like to have them submitted on a Word document and not on a PDF, because I can then use track changes to make comments in the margins, which is really difficult to do on a PDF. I can do it on Google Doc or Word. It's the same, but not on a PDF. The second, I'm going to put this in the chat, is how to save the document. Where is everyone here? Everyone. So I would like you to put your name up, and then title of the seminar, date, and title of paper. Like this, because when you send me the stuff, sometimes if there's several seminars going on, or I'm also marking for other places, if I get an essay without the name on it or without the seminar on it, it's sometimes not immediately evident to me where to place this. The other thing, Freya, if it's okay for you to make a folder again, that would be really nice. If I get essays in my inbox, it's really hard sometimes to search them up again when the kind of marking time comes around. Also, by the way, I'm still processing the marking for the last seminar we did. So some of you are still waiting for comments. They're coming very soon. Yeah, so please, if you're happy for your, actually, Freya, I don't know if you know this. When people load up their essays, maybe do you know if they can change who can read or access the document, or is that only the person who owns the folder?
They can do it themselves. Yeah, so they could. Yeah, it would be good if everyone disabled other people's access, right? So that.
So there's two ways that are possible. So if you upload your essays in the folder that for which Freya is going to send you the link, then all the essays are in one place, and I don't forget anyone who's kind of slipped into the red in my inbox or something like this. But obviously you might not want everybody else to be able to read your essays, so you need to go into the permissions section or share section and disable access for everyone except me, of course, because I'm going to read it. And if you don't want to do it that way because it's too complicated, you can load up a Word document with just, the name of your essay and the date you sent me the email, because then when I go through the folder, I can find the email again more easily. So those two ways. If you're sending it to me as an email, upload a little document with the date that you sent the essay and the title, then I know, and in the kind of format I gave you, or you upload your essay and you figure out how to take away the permissions of everybody else except me, obviously, to access it. And that's for the technical side of it. On the side of writing, one thing that I noticed, the first problem is marking. So I'm asked by the new center to give a grade on this. Technically, I think that's not a thing you can do when people come from different backgrounds. Some of you have already professional writing experience and don't need any advice on how to edit a text in terms of, footnotes and all the kind of paraphernalia that is necessary for making a text, for example, publishable. Some of you write in a way that is not intended for the text being publishable, but is more kind of elaboration of thoughts. Some people come from an academic background and will write a really analytic paper, and others do a kind of more thought association, artistic writing type essay. So the grade, in a way, I'm not very happy with having to give grades, but what I will do is give very detailed comments that are geared never in terms of criticism to say, oh, this is good or this is crap or something like this, but just to see what's in there, what are you trying to do with this, and what are the next steps to go in the direction of what you want to do with writing. So that's my objective in giving comments on the texts. And I would say overall, in the future, I'm probably going to devise a little scheme where you can roughly see where you position yourself if you were writing for publication. What steps would still need to be undertaken in order for the text to go in the direction of something that's publishable, depending on context, because the writing is obviously very different if you write for a blog that's published or if you write for an academic journal, and then again according to discipline. But still, there's some commonalities that I think are shared by all, and one of which, it may seem very dry to some of you, but the formatting of the references and being very generous with attributing things that you quote or refer to. So you refer to an author, spell the author out in full, first name and last name the first time you mention them, and put the reference in. It's very dull, but when you do it, you actually begin to realize how rich the network of thought is that you situate yourself in. And it's also one way of giving something back in an environment where people get little back. It's very hard to write, and when you quote someone, it's a way of giving something back. I think it's a really good ethics of writing. So I think for maybe one last thought would be something I've noticed overall in the writing is that many of us start with an associative, generative type of writing. As you write, the idea becomes clear. And one first step, perhaps for those of you who recognize themselves in this, is that when you finished writing, go through your text and highlight for yourself the bits, the nuggets where you have discovered a formulation of your problematic. And copy that or rephrase it and put it right at the beginning, at the very top of your introductory paragraph, and explain what it is that you mean by this. And although I used to think that you can't give it all away because then it's boring to read, it doesn't actually work like this unless it's fiction. Like if you write a novel, obviously you're not going to say who did it, you know, but in a kind of academic or semi-academic text, it works more like a fugue where you have a repeating theme. So you state it right at the beginning, but you can't state it until you've written the text, because often we discover this while we write. So when you finish writing, take your gold nuggets that you've produced along the way, put them right at the beginning. And then as you develop your theme, think of it like a fugue where this comes back, but every time it comes back richer and deeper. And then the conclusion is in a way, is the hardest to write, because you don't want to write something like, oh, I've explained this and this and this, and it's like, okay, I got it. The conclusion is in a way, what is it that you found and what does it open up to? So there's a basic kind of structure that I found sometimes with texts that have really interesting discoveries in them, but in terms of structure are not strategically built yet. The building actually comes after you've written, for some of us. I know some people, and I did it once in my life in an exam. I'm so proud of myself. I had a plan and I followed the plan. I got even a very good grade for it. I've never been able to reproduce the miracle. I cannot write a plan and execute it and then I've written it. I write and then I chuck half of it away, and with what's left, I go back and think, okay, then I write the introduction and last the conclusion. So I don't know. Everyone has their own method, but that's something I've noticed in a large number of texts I've come across. So I think I've talked enough for three of you to gather the courage rather than me pointing you out if it comes to that. I need three more people who choose a text together, please. For next.
Yeah, I also have two more.
You're happy to do that, Freya? Okay, so maybe. What did you say, Freya?
Cécile.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I wanted to ask to clarify, because Clara asked in the chat if the next session is actually on October 8th, and I also wondered that because there's like a week gap in between the sessions. Was that intended? Because that's what it says on the...
I think so. Now, as I said earlier, with dates, I'm a bit shaky, so I think there was a reason why we skipped a date. Let me just look at them quickly. You need it. Freya, did you say you were happy to do the text, the third one?
I'm actually not even taking the seminar this time, so I would be the 29th person then.
Oh, of course. Okay. Next week. 1st of October. I think it's correct. It must be correct if we've set it up this way. Because I think I was traveling that weekend, and that I'm not actually traveling that weekend.
Okay, and then I just wanted to ask, do you already have a date when?
Oh no, sorry, wait, I was in the wrong month. I was looking at August, so just one sec. No, I wasn't in the wrong month, sorry. Here we go. 1st of October is next week. No, I don't know why we set it up this way, but I think I was planning to travel on this weekend and it fell through. So we have the 8th, the 15th, and then the 22nd, right?
Yes.
Okay, no, it's all good. I think that was because of me. I thought I was not going to be here. Yeah, so...
And do we already have a date for when the essays should be submitted? Is that a month after the
how are they normally? Because I tend to give a lot of deadline extensions, so maybe we can just say a month afterwards would be fine for me. Is it possible to write that on the folder? In which case, those of you who know already that you're not going to be able to meet the deadline and you do want to submit a piece, if you write to me before the deadline asking for an extension, then that's possible. But after the deadline, a little bit more tricky. So yeah, I think we're going to have to wrap up and just get 3 more of you to jump into the deep end with finding your own texts. Christina.
Hi, excuse me, it's my first time, first session with you guys. I just wanted to ask, what is usually the size of the essay? How many pages? Do you have requirements in that sense?
Oh, yes. Okay, I thought that was written somewhere. It's 3,000 words max.
Okay.
And it can also be a visual work or a sound work if you want it to be. So it doesn't have to be a classical essay. It's up to you. But if you do write, it's 3,000 words max. I started out allowing people to write much longer text, but actually because many of you come from very different backgrounds, I think the shorter length is more of a writing exercise because it forces you to bring structure into it, and it's easier to take it as a kind of writing experiment.
Thank you.
So would you be happy, Christina, to work with 2 more people on choosing a text for a very short presentation next week?
To be honest, I would prefer to see how actually this happens.
Not to worry. That's fine. Do you know what? Let's leave it at this. And also, I'm not entirely sure if everyone who signed up really is signed up as taking the course and having to do presentations. So if you're not, maybe we don't actually need so many presentations. That's something we can discuss next time. If any of you talk on other platforms until next week and you decide that you do have a text that you would like to present together, then just put your names in the sheet, and yeah, hopefully we'll have enough people next time to not then have a kind of overflow or too many people for the last 2 sessions. But yeah, thanks very much for your Sunday. I know that it's very early for some of you, for those in the States, so that's actually a huge honor for someone getting up early on a Sunday morning. Really very much appreciated, and everybody else too. Your Sunday is very precious. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing your presentations, reading your writing. That's a really fun part of doing the seminar. So thanks for joining the seminar, and see you next week. And thanks, Freya, for your
moderation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.